financial services provider.
We need to talk about budgeting.
Yes.
Budgeting is the world's most boring, soul-destroying, unhappy thing, because budgeting tells you what you can't do. Budgeting says, no, there's not enough money for coffees, there's not enough money for fun, there's not enough money for a holiday this year because we've got this expense, and this expense. Budgeting is dull. That's why so many people don't do it.
Yes,
and once they do it, they just ignore it.
And I think, for everyone listening, it's probably one of the very few times you've actually given me a rule, and one was never talk about budgeting. So I'm glad you've used the B word. Now I can talk about something else. So I think let's start with this. So this very big unit trust company in America called Fidelity went and actually looked at their client base, the people that they have in there, and they've got many thousands of clients, and they've had them for many decades now, and actually tried to understand how their clients allocate the money that they earn on a monthly basis. And then they looked at the people that do it successfully, and they came up with this rule that they call it the 50-15-5 rule. And
50, 15, 5,
yeah.
15
it doesn't add
plus
up to
115 is 65, 70.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Okay, I've got you. I've got 70, right?
And then there's the balance. And so let's start with the balance. I see I've actually got my maths wrong there. But so the 30 out of the 100 that you earn. And what's important just to start here, this is the money that you take home on a monthly basis. So this is now after tax has been deducted from your income. This is now what do you do with the rest? And what they're doing here is to say, out of every 100 rand that you earn, that's take home, that arrives in your bank account, this is how you could allocate it without worrying too much about tracking every single cent and the like, because you know how much comes in. And then you say, well, okay, half of that needs to go into one place, and I'll discuss what that is, and so on and so on and so on. But maybe let's start there. The half that you allocate to the boring stuff. And that's the stuff that costs you, for housing, for example. So whether you rent or you've got a home loan or the like, that goes there. It's all the essential expenses in your life.
This is after tax money, because in South Africa, you pay a 45% marginal tax rate if you earn over a certain amount of money. So the first 50, if you're talking about essentials, 90% of that will be taken up by tax. So this is once you paid your tax.
This is take home.
This is your take home money. Okay. So
this is what arrives in your bank account every month.
Got you.
So half of that you allocate to the essentials in life, and that's the really regular stuff. So your housing costs, your transport costs, your medical costs, and your groceries. But what it doesn't include would then be the if you like eating out, whether it's takeouts or restaurants and the like. That's in a separate place, because there's an element of fun and an element of discretion in spending money like that. So that's the first 50 rand out of every 100 that you take home on a monthly basis.
So that's healthcare and paying off your debts and childcare and transport, and that's getting to and from work and paying the mortgage or paying the rent, whatever it might be. That stuff that you cannot avoid has to be paid for with half the money.
Yeah.
And if you're paying too much rent, well, then you need to either earn more money or move to a cheaper place.
Yeah, you're starting to get some kind of a way to make a sensible decision for your money. You're right. So it gives you some kind of decision-making tool now. And then the next 15 rand out of every 100, you need to allocate to your long-term savings. So this is not the money that you allocate to my holiday fund or the handbag fund or the shoe fund or whatever the deal is. This is the really long-term money that I need to set aside for that boring stuff. The 30 years time when I'm never going to retire, but actually, everyone retires somewhere along the line. So that's what you do with that money. And in South Africa, that would be a combination of investing in your company or a retirement fund or your personal retirement annuity and your long-term savings. So, the tax-free savings, all of those things, that's where this 15 rand out of every 100 goes. And then five rand out of every 100 that you take home goes to an emergency fund. And to me, I've always thought your emergency fund should be about 3 to 6 months worth of your expenses. So whatever you spend on a monthly basis in totality, you need to set aside about 3 to 6 months worth of that to cover things that you can't plan for. So, we've had lots and lots of water interruptions in Joburg, and, when your geyser bursts, it's all good and well that your insurance company might cover it, but somewhere along the line, you're going to pay an excess, and you need to get some kind of emergency stuff done. That's what this emergency fund is for.
Or if worst comes to worst, you lose your job, you can survive for 3 to 6 months before you find another one.
Yeah. And so 5 rand out of every 100 that you take home, this is what you.
And once you get to, let's be nice and conservative. Once you get to that 6 months, because you could get to that 6 months over I don't know, a 2 or 3 year period. You could gradually build up that emergency fund. Then you take your 5% and add it to the fun part?
I would add it to the fun part.
Would you?
Yeah. I think
what's happened to you? Where's Warren?
what we've got to realize with us as human beings is if we're so strict and so disciplined, and I love using kind of diet as an example. You follow a really sensible diet, but it's incredibly strict. Unfortunately, it's not sustainable. What happens is somewhere along the line you go on the big binge. And you completely wreck all the good work that you've done. And unfortunately, with money, if you do that, it's very difficult to recover. So for me, rather give yourself that freedom at the start to say, okay, so the rest of the money now I can do on the takeouts or the entertainment or the holidays and whatever the deal is, and I've got freedom. I'm allowed. It's guilt-free spending to do that. The only caveat here is this is what you have to do every month. So you can't say, oh, great, those guys on the radio said this is a good deal. I'm going to do that for 10 months. And then it gets to kind of December, January, and just forget about it because, December is long and I've got to do holiday. This has to be part of your December, January planning as well. So that's the only trick here. If you're not going to do that, then I'd say to you, make your emergency fund even bigger because your emergencies are going to include, emergency expenses on holidays.
Which are not emergencies, but they can become emergencies once you've spent the money.
Yeah.
So the first 50% to those essentials, 15% to retirement savings, 5% to the emergency fund, up until you've got at least 6 months of savings.
Yep.
If you are somebody who's feels like your career is higher risk, or you do have more than your fair share of bad luck, top it up to 8 or 12 months if you feel the need to, and you can afford to do that if you're conservative about it and keep adding.
Yeah, and so the people that should have bigger emergency funds, a lot of contract workers are, they're in that space where they might earn well over a year, but that earnings might come in lumps. First 3 months they do really well, 2 months things are really quiet, and then suddenly they get a big batch again. So for those people, I would say you definitely build up your emergency fund more so. But for someone who has a reasonably predictable income, stream from a salary, and it's stays the same every month, then you can go down to the 3 to 6 months as a range, and that's a great range. There's nothing wrong with that.
Got you. And then 30% for fun.
For fun.
That's a lot of fun.
Well, I suspect
it's a more fun than I suspected you would allow.
Yeah, I think I'm getting older and realizing that most of us are living longer. We're probably going to need to save for longer as well. And if you kind of absolutely drill yourself, for the first 20 years of your working career, you might end up dying of stress before you get there. So give yourself the freedom to build up savings, to have fun as well, to get that balance. And I think that's a critical thing here is that like all of these things around habits, good habits are about balance, and this is purely a habit. The way you spend money, you can develop a good habit and do it well and get longevity out of your money, or go wild and get no longevity out of your money.
Can I punt something I did today?
Please do.
I spoke about the power of compounding.
Yes.
And the power of compounding over a long period of time. I've tweeted the link to an article I wrote on businessinsider.co.za today. If you go to that website, you will find it there, or you can just follow my Twitter feed. I'll retweet it now, just in case you missed it. And Warren talks about compounding and stuff, but I found a way that I think is not only easy to understand.
I understood it for once.
Well, it's easy to understand, and it's quite fun as well. And you can have a huge amount of fun if you just go onto Google and you just say compound interest calculator, and then start playing with it and play with numbers and saying, if I did 10 Rand at 2% over 50 years, how much money would I have? If I did 10 Rand at 5% over 50 years, how much would I have? If I had 10% at 10% over 50 years, how much would I have? And the numbers will blow your mind because it makes you understand, Warren Ingram, the power of how much every percentage point in growth that you get matters.
Yep.
And how much every percentage point you pay in fees matters, because what you spend on your investments is taken out of your savings. And you don't save it because it costs you money, and it, over a long period of time. And for many people, especially younger people today, you're probably going to work for 50 years.
Because you're going to live that long.
Yeah.
I mean, you need to, you are going to live a long time. You need to save and work for a long time.
Understand the power of compounding, understand it early and understand it smartly, and start now.